Hello, and welcome to my podcast, Good Grief. My name is Dr. Christine Malone, and in this podcast, we talk about trauma, tragedy, and survival. In each episode, I will interview someone that has gone through grief in some way, and we will discuss the impact it has had on their life. By sharing these stories, we hope that others won't feel alone should they be going through similar situations. Enjoy. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. My guest is going to share his story about an accident that changed his life. So, guest, if you would please introduce yourself and then tell us a bit about your story.
Thanks, Christine. My name's Mark Berridge. I live in Brisbane, Australia, and I'm a little over 50. I've got three beautiful children, pretty much adult children nowadays. Youngest is 16, and a beautiful wife, Lucy. We both have pretty intense careers, or did have, and pretty busy life. Lots of kids' sporting events. I was cycling a lot each week, probably 150 miles of cycling, like bicycle cycling as part of my fitness and headspace. I used to play quite a lot of field hockey, but my knees had given away to that. So cycling was sort of my current activity. I loved getting in the ocean. I love snow skiing. I try and get at least one or two skiing trips in per year. Even though in Australia we probably don't have the greatest skiers or ski fields in the world, it was still just like a lovely outlet to do with my family. And then in March 2019, my life took a bit of a different turn, where I fell off a bicycle halfway through a very typical Sunday morning ride for me. So about a 40, 50 mile ride, and halfway through that, fell off the bike going around a corner. So the bike's just hit what we'd call a shoved piece of road. So a soft piece of bitumen that's sort of been pushed down and forward. So as a result, it was about an inch below ground level with an inch lip on it. And I've hit that, and the bike's sort of out of control for a moment. I've had to make a controlled crash decision. So I decided that the grassy park straight ahead was a much better option than splattering myself on the pavement as I tried to go around the corner. And unfortunately, in that grassy park, there was a big stormwater drain that was about 5 foot below ground level that I couldn't see. So I've catapulted off the handlebars and then pile drived my head into the bottom of that drain. So that took away my breath, delivered enormous pain, and pretty tough time waiting for the ambulance and the paramedics to arrive. And it really changed the dynamic of that day. I was supposed to be flying to Salt Lake City actually for work that night. For a project I was working on, so flying from Brisbane, Australia to Salt Lake. And I was really, really looking forward to getting another sneaky ski trip in over the 2-week trip there. Like I'd been able to get out skiing on the weekends and stuff like that. And all of a sudden that looked extremely unlikely.
Yeah, we have great skiing in Utah here. I'll say that for having been there myself. It's fantastic. So, were you bicycling with other people? Or do you have somebody there who actually saw it all happen, so they were able to call for services right away?
Yeah, really lucky. I had 8 guys with me, 2 physiotherapists or physical therapists, as you might say in the States, and 1 nurse. So probably that helped a little bit. But yeah, at that point in time, the first thing was just getting my breathing under control, because I obviously didn't know the injuries that happened to me, but later on in hospital, I learned that I'd fractured 3 ribs, I'd fractured my left shoulder blade and my left wrist, but most materially, I'd crushed 2 of my vertebrae, 1 to 40% of its original height, and a big piece of my vertebrae had gone into that vertebra had gone into the spinal cord, compressing my spine to about 75% of its normal width size. So that really basically, I guess the body's so clever, it contracted around basically the bottom of the lungs. So the vertebra I crushed the worst is T12. So if you put your hand on your ribs and roll that around to the middle of your back, that's the level of my injury. So basically everything below that part of my body is now impacted to some degree. And basically that meant that all that part of my body just contracted, stopping my breathing. So really the first thing I had to do in the ditch was just work out, how I could calm myself down and slow down my breathing and find a way just to get things slightly back under control the things I could control at that point in time.
Yeah. So how long were you in the hospital, and what kind of procedures did you need to have done while you were there?
Yeah, so carted off to hospital, lots of scans, and about 3 hours later, we heard the results. And part of that briefing was that we had to have emergency surgery on my spine. If I didn't have that, there was no hope of walking again. So later that day, they inserted 2 9-inch rods down the middle of my back. So if you imagine your sort of little finger, screws about the size of that, screwing those rods into my good vertebrae. And that's about the diameter of the rods that they sort of physically insert inside my body to hold me together for a year and give me a hope of walking again. And in total, that was a 7-week stint in hospital, but practically a year of full-time rehabilitation to learn to walk again. So went from the 7 weeks in residing in hospital to having another 3 months of full-time day hospital, working on two long days per week. Plus I'd do other physical activity around that to just try and work on my walking and work on my mobility again.
So what were the original expectations from your care team? What did they say they thought you would be able to do or not be able to do?
It's actually, sort of, to me, as a semi-funny story. Like you're so shocked. You're really trying to, I was trying to remember what had I heard. And the thing that really shocked me the most was the comment about more than 50% of compression in your spinal cord, which is what I heard on that first day. And then when I actually had the rods taken out of my back, the surgeon that took them out, he said, "Where'd you get 50% from?" And I go, "I'm sure that's what I heard in the first day." And he goes, "Well, it's closer to 80." So I think probably that helped that maybe I didn't hear it quite as bad, or I don't remember it quite as bad as what it was. So I guess they told me that I had to have emergency surgery, that the chances of me, that they couldn't give any guidance on future mobility, but without that operation, obviously had no hope of walking again. And only once I come out of the operation could they tell. But so my memories are that 50% compression, and my memories are the picture I painted of myself based on what they told me about my mobility, which was most likely I was going to be someone with very, very limited mobility. So I think I always had the expectation I'd be able to walk a bit, but probably on some form of crutches and very short distances was the best that was the best version I could paint of what they'd told me I would have. But at the same time, I'm saying, how do I accept that outcome? But how do I aim for something more? What's the best I can get to? And I remember, I guess, being so impacted that I couldn't paint a picture of full recovery. There was no way I could do that. I could sort of paint this picture of how do I have, near to full recovery as being the best I could sort of find a way to positively picture myself out of that briefing. But I think one of the amusing bits is my wife's a lawyer. She never misses anything. And, for quite a while, and particularly as I started writing my book, I'm asking and saying, "Lucy, well, what do you remember of that day?" And I never really got anything back. And it was only over a glass of wine with some neighbours about 2 years after the event, she finally fessed up that she was so impacted by what she'd heard, that she was just focused on not falling over and how she could push herself into the wall and slide around the corner and sit into the chair. So the only chair she could see. So I sort of forgive her for not being able to remember anything in those circumstances. So yeah, it was pretty. Yeah, it was it was a fair shock to us both.
Yeah, I'm certain that as the spouse that was very traumatic for her as well. So I totally understand that. So it's been for 4 years. 4 years.
Yeah, a bit over
So
4 years, 4.25 years.
yeah, how are you doing today?
Yeah, so I'm still not much good at getting off the floor. I'm someone that loves the ocean, but I've yet to brave putting my bum on a beach towel in the sand, because me getting off the ground in soft sand might make entertaining watching for people. So that you're getting on and off the floor is hard. Walking up and down stairs, particularly if I'm carrying any loads, hard. But generally life's pretty good. Like I'm in a great spot. I can walk about half the speed I used to be able to walk. I can functionally do almost anything I want to do. There's still, things like getting back on the ski fields one day, and other things I'd, love to do from just connect back to parts of me that I really valued, that I can put on the list for the future. But in general, yeah, I'm really quite fortunate in terms of where I got to through, hard work, good guidance, lots of kindness and love. And I guess being able to manage those, tougher moments, because anytime you go through something like this, you got those, obviously moments where you're going okay and moments where it's just a bit tougher.
Yes, no, I understand that. So having been so active prior to this injury, how have you kind of reimagined yourself, if you will, or identified yourself since then as someone who can't do quite as much as you used to do, but still find, you know, value and pleasure in life and so on?
Yeah, so I think at the very start, when you're disconnected from your identity is really happened to me from that physical side of my identity, and that's central. Like so many other parts of my identity hang off that. Being able to run the boundary line of my kids' sporting events and other things that I valued. Just simple daily things like being the one that being able to carry three bags and 4 bags of groceries up the stairs. Nowadays no one in my house will let me carry anything up the stairs. Let us race down and you know, which is great as well. But you got all these disconnections, so you just got to focus on the things you can do. Like I can walk, you can walk well. I've picked out longer hikes, 3 or 4 day long scenic hikes, and do them as like a goal. How do I work up to this? Because it's going to be a particularly hilly, difficult hike. Which ones can I pick out that I know they've got enough flexibility in them that I can, if I'm not going that good physically, I can sort of adjust, what I need to do and get a plan B happening if I need to. So you just pick out things you pick out the things you can do and don't focus on the things you can't do.
So it sounds like you've been able to remain positive about what you can do and not dwell on the things you can't do, which I think is probably why part of why you are where you are today and being able to focus on those things. Are there other parts of your life that you have had that were impacted by this injury other than the outdoor activities you had used to do?
Oh yeah, I mean, my whole career got smashed. So could no look at the point in time of the injury. I'd regularly be on projects overseas for long periods of time. I'd worked for a mining company here in Australia a long time in negotiation, sales and marketing, and most of that was international. Lived overseas a number of times, and certainly at the point in time of the injury, I was on a project in Salt Lake, and I'd had periods where I'd be in projects in Montreal for a long period of time, etc. So you'd be going back and forth on planes. Like I couldn't work as intensely. Found that I'd had this desire of being superhuman and getting away to work full time after the injury, but it just didn't work out that way for me. And the reality is we're not superhuman as much as believing we are to a degree might help, but you've also got to give yourself the license that you're really not, and deal with what you can do. So yeah, I had to go back and work out what I was going to do career wise, because I was no longer going to be the consultant that was flying around the world and doing those projects in the same way or working full time. And that led me on to, I guess, reconnecting with writing, which I'd been good at as a child, but hadn't really taken on. It was part of my career, I suppose, in terms of a skill that helped me, but it was never core. It wasn't what I did. And then becoming a writer and speaker about my accident, trying to help other people in the same way that people were able to make a difference to me.
That's fantastic. So it kind of like the silver lining, if you will, out of what happened to you was to find a space where you can feel like you're helping others and giving back to people who might be in the same space, which I'm guessing is something you might not have been interested in doing, when you were on this career track that you were on. So, yeah. So, do you miss what you used to do, your career that you did?
Oh, I think miss lots of things about life before, right? But I can't change that, and there's so many things about life now that are different and better. Like as you say, that I would like to think I had empathy before, um, but it's stronger now. I'd like to think I practice humility and gratefulness before, but they're both stronger now because I know they were the foundations of what got me through this. I use them as coping mechanisms now all the time to be grateful for what I've got rather than looking at what I don't have. And I think that's helped me so much better to connect with people and genuinely find that way to help people and be grateful for that opportunity that's come out of this situation. So yeah, got so much more rich life. I think in so many ways, from what's happened out of this instance. And I've got some dad jokes to go with it. I can say that I'm an accidental author. I can say that I catapulted myself back into contact with my creative side, and I won't go on because my kid's grown at all of these, silly dad expressions. But yeah, so many good things have happened out of this.
I appreciate your positive attitude, because I know a lot of people who might be in your same position who lost so much physical ability that was so important and so much of a part of their life, might dwell in what I can no longer do. Whereas you're talking about the things that you can now do, and the empathy and the compassion and so on that you've learned because of the shoes you've now worn, are kind of gifts that you've received from having had this injury happen.
I've definitely had to practice it, right? So I have, periods of time where, I might miss a rehab session, or I just, get a bad phone call or something's gone on. And I'm just not really, not coping. So I let myself have that little wallow for a moment and go, it's okay to acknowledge these feelings and to realize that, in this moment, I'm really missing this aspect of my life, or, I feel incapable for these reasons, failure or whatever you might have that point in time feeling. I think it's important to acknowledge it and actually not deny the feeling. And then I just try and hang in there and tell myself it is just a feeling. It's just a moment. It will pass. And then really, I guess the biggest thing I do is then at the first opportunity, I focus on something small. It might be as simple as getting down on my exercise mat and stretching and doing the things I can do, the things that will help me drive myself in the right direction. The simplest, smallest things that A, is helpful to where I feel I need to go, but B, I can actually get some joy out of. And then I build on that joy. What's the next thing I might want to do that gives me some joy? Okay, I may not be able to participate in this work project, opportunity that came up, but I can still have coffee with this friend, Brad, who I know is going to talk really intelligently to me about world economics or something that's going to interest me, that part of me still works, that I can still contribute to, and I can have a great discussion and feel better. And yeah, just by building off one tiny thing that I can still do, and then moving it into a bigger thing that I do and value, I move on from the moment of focusing on what I couldn't do. That's been my go-to tactic.
It's like baby steps and focusing on small things at one time to keep building. So rather than thinking someday I'm going to do a Olympic skier or whatever, instead it's someday I'm going to do this, or today I can do this, and kind of looking at things in a more of a short-term thing, rather than maybe grieving the entire loss of things that you could do before this injury.
It's spot on. And, like if we just dwell on skiing for a minute, which is obviously what, one of the things I did love doing, yeah, I'll go sometime and I'll go somewhere that I love as a skiing venue, so that I can enjoy all of the things I used to love about it, the food and other things. So it's not just about the skiing. And I'll go there, and the first day, it's just a half day on the greens and see how I go, see how I pull up. By the end of the week, I will have made my way back onto the groomed blue runs. Maybe I'll never get back on the expert only slopes, right? I get that. It probably probably wasn't even making sense at the point in time when I was chasing my, then 18-year-old boy down them just before the accident, or 17-year-old boy, whatever he was, probably didn't even make sense then. So it certainly does make sense now, but I can still go back and do good bits of it, and I'll find more joy out of doing those runs now than I ever would have before, because I will appreciate them so much more.
That's a great point. So you know what it's like to not be able to do it. So you could appreciate the things that I can do, because I know what I can't do, and
Yes.
I recognized that before. So I think that's a great point, as far as recognizing who you are as a new person in your body as it is now, and your space of recovery. So yeah, I think that's a great story, and it really speaks to your keeping a positive attitude toward what you can do, rather than dwelling on what I can no longer do, right? So or I can no longer do now. Maybe I can do it in the future, but I can't do it now. So I think
Yeah,
that,
and I've had to rebuild that, Christine. Like you go that first few hours, like I really can't remember that much of the briefing immediately post the doctors telling me, what had happened on that first day. I just think I was in complete shock for a while, 3 or 4 hours. But as I started to get myself, out of that, it was thinking about people that had done amazing things, imagining how they might have tackled their situation. Think about what I don't want to be, where I don't want to be in life, and just what do I need to do now? Control my breathing, tiniest little movements, and just build it up, and I think definitely at the start you're catastrophizing to some degree and thinking, we've got 2 sets of stairs in our house. I'm not getting up those again. We might need to sell our house. I may not be walking my daughter down the aisle like I hoped. If that circumstances arrives in our life, and who knows, right? But suddenly I'm that first day, all I'm focused on initially when I'm in shock is all these big things that feel like they've been taken away with, not that much justification for, my mind problem solving to that. But of course the mind does. And then the way I got out of that was just bringing that right back to the smallest things. And what's the smallest things I can do now? What instruction do I need to take on from the medics? And what do I need to do next? How do I generate a bit of hope for myself and sustain that hope? I don't feel like seeing anyone, but somebody's arrived. How do I live in the moment of what they're telling me and see what benefit I can get out of that? And so often I got enormous benefit out of those visits that if I had been less encouraging to myself to really embrace what they were saying to me, I would have taken less positivity from it.
so remaining positive, but being realistic at the same time, and recognizing what you can do, what you can't do, and working toward the things that you want to do. So, to your point about your daughter and walking her down the aisle, I mean, you're still here. Even if you were in a wheelchair, you could still accompany her down the aisle, kind of a thing. So, yeah, some of that I think is related to making priorities. What do we really want to do? What works the most for us? What's most important to us, and then working toward that.
And just to extend that for a minute, because you captured it so beautifully, because it's not about the fact I can't do it anymore. It's just I'm not doing it in the way that, in that point in time when I'm visualizing, I'm not doing it in the way that I expected to be doing it. But actually, did you need to do it in the way that you expected to do it? What really was important about that event, it wasn't about the walking, necessarily, right? It was about being there.
Yes, no,
And
yeah,
so you captured that so beautifully.
yeah. See, we imagine ourselves doing what we think we're going to do, but we can do something a little differently, and that's still okay. We're still here. I mean, you're here for the daughter to walk her down the aisle or wheel her down the aisle, if you will.
Or if I didn't have a brand new helmet, that did an amazing job, and if it, just had struck the ground slightly differently, things would have been different, right? So fortunate in so many ways, and fortunate to live in a wonderful country with wonderful health cover as the US is as well. I suppose we come back here, it's been 4 years since the accident. For a long time I sort of didn't really see myself being that capable of doing long haul travel, but I've just had the joy of coming to the beautiful state of Washington the first time at the end of April. I absolutely loved it. I went to a place called Bellingham, and it was just delightful. The people, the community of authors I met there were just incredible. I managed to go out and see wild orcas for the first time, which I've never seen before in my life. It's always been on my list of things to do, and it was just the most epic, beautiful day. With the T-46 pod or whatever they were, and even though the matriarch had passed, it was just a most beautiful, magic moment, and the whole 5-day trip was incredible. None of that would have happened but for me banging my head pretty hard and taking away lots of other things I visualized myself doing in the future. Of course, I never visualized myself flying to Bellingham, seeing orcas and attending an authors conference. Never on my radar. Is it one of the best things that ever happened in my life? You better believe it is. So I think that moment of wallow, that moment where your life's been turned upside down, you got no idea where it's going to go. But if you can just find a way to get through this moment There will always be better moments ahead. Think about your past and all the times you're in a tough moment and you got through it, and then there were better things you never thought were going to happen. That has absolutely happened to me here. I know it's happened to every listener on this call to some degree. And yeah, I'm extremely blessed the way my life's worked out. Yes, I'd love to still be running the boundary of my kids' games and contributing in different ways to I can contribute. But that's not my way now. And there's so many other better things. Well, not better things, different things, great things that are happening.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of good things in this world and we can't do them all, right? So it's,
Yeah, right. Different things that you didn't. I love your example. Of course, I live in the Pacific Northwest, so the example of Bellingham and the orcas is. I've seen them and it is beautiful. Yes, I get that. So I know reimagining who we are, but not necessarily spending a lot of time dwelling on what we can't do anymore, but dwelling on looking at forward to what we can do and the opportunities that are available to us once you accept kind of where you are in this space is really a powerful message.
And in my book, I talk a little bit about good enough acceptance when I do public speaking. So how do we, I think sometimes I feel because it was in my corporate world so much, the Kubler-Ross grief cycle, acceptance is held up as a really big thing. And it is important, but if we dwell on perfect acceptance, we don't move forward. And if we can just sort of go, well, that's good enough. I sort of accept, where I'm at in this way, and I can postpone my feelings about how did the accident actually happen, and I can go back and revisit that later. I don't need to punish myself for, revisiting the accident over and over and over again. I just need to be, what's my good enough acceptance now to go, I just move forward. I park that aside for now and I focus on what I can, need to do today.
Yes. So you've referenced your book. Tell us a little bit about your book and why you decided to write it and who your audience is.
So Christine, you've done a great job of seeding it all the way through, because the book's called A Fraction Stronger, and listeners, that was unintentional, with just the focus on those little things like the fractions. It is about the little steps, doing them over and over again, focusing on the little things inside us that make us up, that give us our strength. And so, yeah, when I wrote A Fraction Stronger, I was really focused on all those little things, little bits of help from people, input, visions of stories, other stories of other people that came and saw me in the hospital, that make us a bit stronger. And I guess, by going through something, we become stronger again. So I wanted people to realize they're actually probably stronger than they think, but also that with a little bit of a framework, they could probably become even stronger again. So the idea was a fraction stronger. When you write, you do try and pick out someone, a particular avatar. So for me, it was was mostly the person doing the physical trauma that was really, impacted. But I wanted also to make sure I could touch the people that were surrounding the person with physical trauma. So if you're helping someone, you've got a slightly better idea of how I might be able to help them just that little bit better, or how might I be able to steer them in the right direction if they needed it. I call some of the examples like gentle interventions, and they weren't always gentle, but like things my wife did for me, to kick me up the tail if I needed to be, I was like, there was a point in time where I was feeling so guilty for the impact on my family that I was apologizing all the time. Every time they came in, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I was actually using that emotion really positively when they weren't there, just to do the little things over and over again. But whenever they came in, I'd sort of fall back to looking in the past. I'm sorry for this accident. I'm sorry this impact is having on you. My oldest boy was in his final year of school, all these apologies. And so she bought me this bloody annoying button that goes, I'm sorry, and in like 6 different versions of I'm sorry, and just delivered it to the hospital. And I must admit, I was pretty perturbed at the point in time, but it just helped me realize the energy I was putting in that emotion and got me to move forward. So that, how all these things that people do for us, these gentle interventions, and sort of celebrate and share those, because you can do those to somebody you love and help them just focus a bit more of their energy to looking forward than looking backwards. And if it can get more energy going that way, then that's where their momentum will go. And eventually they can sort of pull themselves out of whatever circumstances they're in. So yeah, that's the idea. So a fraction stronger, we're all a fraction stronger than we expected. We can all help each other be that fraction stronger. And if we can do that, we can tackle almost anything.
Yes, great message. So I have really enjoyed talking to you. So is there anything else you'd like to share before we end this interview?
I think that the one last thing is the extension for me is, I've got the book. It's just been an amazing journey, and I'd like to just take that one step forward. So I'm now trying to work on an online cohort program that'll where we can have people doing, I guess, supporting each other. In the same way, when I was writing the book, I was in a author community, and the authors support each other through what is an uncertain process and challenging process of trying to craft your message in your book. And how do we help them get better results by having that sense of community, that sense of belonging, and get better physical and mental outcomes out of whatever it is that they're trying to tackle. So that's my current project, and I'd love to write again. I finished that trip to Bellingham really, really, really wanting to be an author. I feel like it's my space. I never would have got to this point but for smashing my head into the ground. So yeah, I feel very blessed that I've now got my landed where I was supposed to be. Yeah.
That's awesome. So when your episode posts, we're definitely going to put a link to your book in there. So if you have other links, where you're looking for your support group or whatever it is you're putting together, please let us know what that is so we can put that in there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Christine. And thank you, listeners. It's been a delight. And thank you for letting me share some messages.
Yes, thank you so much for being my guest. Thank you for listening to this episode of Good Grief. To hear more about my personal story, please pick up a copy of my book, The Day I Became the Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival, available in paperback, Kindle, and Audible via Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other online book retailers.